All right. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight for the Multigenerational Center Feasibility Study Service Area 3 virtual community meeting hosted by Parks and Rec of the National Capital Park and Planning Commission. Welcome to community members, staff, and elected officials. We'd like to start with a couple of meeting norms. Throughout the presentation, we'll ask you to participate in polls. When prompted, please submit your response by selecting an option in the GoToWebinar window. Also, throughout the presentation, we'd love to know what your questions are, comments. Please make sure to enter those questions and comments in the Q&A area of GoToWebinar. Throughout the meeting, we have coordinators who will watch the questions come in, answer live if possible, and all other questions will be answered at the conclusion of the meeting. We value your input.
Valoramos a su opinión.
Today's meeting will be in English. The presentation materials will be available in English and Spanish beginning November 10th at www.pgparks.com.
La reunión de hoy será en inglés. Los materiales de presentación estarán disponibles en inglés y español a partir del 10 de noviembre en www.pgparks.com.
There will be a meeting and presentation in Spanish on November 18th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Questions, comments, and feedback can be shared with the planning team in English or Spanish. Look for more information on the upcoming meetings on www.pgparks.com.
Habrá una reunión y presentación en español el 18 de noviembre de 6:30 a las 8 de la noche. Las preguntas y los comentarios se podrán compartir con el equipo de planificación en inglés o en español durante esa presentación. Obtenga más información sobre las próximas reuniones en el mismo website que le dimos antes, www.pgparks.com.
We'd now like to introduce you to the team that will be presenting tonight. I'm your host, Karen Somerville, one of the consultants working with Parks and Rec. We have Bridget Stesney, who's from Parks and Recreation. Kayla Anthony, also with the consultant team from Brailsford and Dunleavy, as well as Amado Fernandez from Hughes Group, along with who's also with the consultant team. So right now we want to start with our first two polls and to get to know a little bit more about who we're speaking to tonight. So first, how did you hear about tonight's meeting? And we'll give just a couple of minutes to allow everyone to participate in this poll. Thanks so much for participating in the first poll. So it looks like a lot of people heard about this meeting through email blast or listserv, followed by council newsletter. Thank you, County Council, and also the Prince George's Parks website. We'd like to take you into the second poll and know what is your age group. If you could take time to answer this poll, we'd appreciate it. All right, thank you so much for participating. So we'll do some more work to engage our 29 and below. It looks like we have a number of stakeholders that are between 50 to 69, 70 and over. Welcome, 30 to 49. So great to see the range of ages participating in today's meeting. So next we'd like to go into a bit of background information about the program. And Bridget Stesney will lead this section of the presentation.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Bridget Stesney from the Department of Parks and Recreation. I'm going to spend a few minutes giving you a little background overview of how we got to talking about multi-generational centers tonight. In 2013, the department, in partnership with the community, developed Formula 2040, our functional master plan for parks and recreation. And this document really establishes a framework to ensure that we as a department are going to be able to meet our parks and recreation needs in the future. The plan divided the county into 9 service areas shown here on the map, and that was based on a 15-minute drive time. The plan also looks at indoor recreation and aquatic needs, and actually looked at ideal locations for new multi-generational centers in the county. The recommendations from 2040 are already being put into action. The southern area of the county actually had the most need, and so they received their first multi-generational center, which opened in March, and a second one will be opening in early 2021. So now we get to turn our focus to the northern and central areas of the county. In developing Formula 2040, we actually found that many residents don't use the smaller community centers, and that would be willing, and they'd be willing to more likely to drive for about 15 minutes to reach the services and the programs that could offer something for their whole family. And so this model, a larger facility that can offer more programs, makes more sense for our residents, but also is a little bit easier for us to run and offer a wider variety of programs. And so these new multi-generational centers would actually build upon our existing network of community centers and be a complement to them, not replace them. And the interesting thing about Service Area 3 is that Formula 2040 actually identified the Glendale Community Center as a location that we should examine as we look at the future needs of Service Area 3. And so we're excited to see that information. And again, this would be a building that would be kind of, I'd say, tweaked or special for every community based on their needs. And some facilities could be new construction and some could be major renovations.
Rich, are you seeing the
Sorry,
multi-gen?
my screen was frozen there. Sorry about that.
You're okay. No worries.
So many of you are familiar with your typical community center. It could have a single gymnasium, a multi-purpose space, or a fitness room. And here on this slide, we're showing you the 2 multi-generational centers in the southern area of the county. In Service Area 9, we have what we call SARC, the Southern Area Aquatics and Recreational Complex. It has a double gymnasium, a fitness center with a running track, numerous multi-purpose areas, and a large indoor aquatic facility. So this is just one example of what a multi-generational community center could look like in a more suburban environment. And on the right, you see what we call South Tech Rec Complex. The indoor recreation amenities have been open, but right now we are finishing the construction on an indoor aquatic facility. So as I said, now we're going to be able to come to the northern and central parts of the county, and we're going to really focus on what the existing service level area is here. How do we really build a business plan? And that's what this feasibility study is doing, is looking at how we build the best facility that we can run and offer programs to each community. This slide shows our schedule and our process. As you can see here, we are in what we're calling phase 1, and we're having our first public community meeting for Service Area 3. And so this is a 2-phase process of a feasibility study, which is going to look at the facility needs and the building programs, so we can really identify what the future multi-generational center for Service Area 3 really looks like. So this is our first meeting, and there'll be more opportunities to engage in this process as we continue.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Next, we'll hear from Kayla Anthony, who will take us into Service Area 3.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to dive into a little more specifics on Service Area 3 itself. So for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with the service areas developed by 2040 or in 2040, they're a little bit different than your councilmanic districts that you're used to. So some of these can actually cross over different councilwomen lines. And so for Service Area 3, you're actually looking at a pretty large service area because, again, it's based on the travel time within that area. And so this area being a suburban, lower density area located outside the Beltway, you can see how far it stretches from Bowie on the east, all the way in toward, you get part of the community of Greenbelt in it, as well as down to Glen Arden. And so there's some major roads that run through this area from 193, 450, and 50, as well as the Beltway there along the edge that really provide this area with an abundance of major roads and auto access. But there's also a rail line and a bike trail that runs through this area. In terms of what the service area looks like demographically, this area is actually growing slightly faster than what was originally forecast in 2040, which was done about 7 or 8 years ago. And so you can see that now the 20-year growth rate forecast for the service area is now matching what is forecast for the county itself, rather than previously it was slightly under that. But the service area makes up about 15% of the county's population, and that's spread across about 57 square miles of mostly suburban development. And so when we think about this top row of demographics, this is helping inform what some of our levels of service are needed to make sure we serve all of your community members. And we get to compare this to what the facilities in the service area currently look like to make sure that you're being served adequately. The bottom row is a little bit more of your social and economic characteristics. So we know that this area is slightly older. It trends older in terms of its median age, but aligns with that average household size. So there are families in this area, but they tend to be older families compared to some of the other service areas. And the median household income for this service area is significantly above the county's median. And so we take that into account when we think about business planning and what the community might be willing to pay to access and the type of programs you might be interested in, family friendly, different senior opportunities and such. So before we dive into a little bit of the community context, I wanted to find out, now that you've seen what the service area looks like, help us understand what part of the service area you're joining us from tonight. We want to make sure that we're able to capture a large swath of individuals. So tell us where you're joining us from. If your area is not listed or you don't feel like you associate with one of the geographic regions, feel free to send a comment into our team letting us know where you're joining from. Give that just another second. All right, thank you. So it looks like the majority of you are actually joining us from the Glendale, Lanham, Seabrook, and north of 450 area, but then a pretty good representation also coming from the remainder of the service area. And again, for those of you who maybe said other or outside, please feel free to share where you're joining from with our planning team. And one more question before we look at some of the facilities in this service area. Tell us about what facilities you've used in the past year, recognizing COVID makes for a little bit of an interesting time, but just typically, how would you use recreation facilities across the service area, the county, in your neighborhood? Give me just a couple more seconds to vote there. And this one will allow you to select more than one. Thank you for those of you who voted. All right, so just to share that, it looks like a lot of you obviously have been outdoors on our trails, our parks nearby. Certainly there's a lot of those in the service area 3 boundaries, but then also using the indoor public rec centers that MNC PPC offers, or perhaps you're using some in your local municipalities, Bowie, down toward Glen Arden, and then lastly, private fitness centers. And yes, as Sonia just said, feel free to share where you live in the chat. She's monitoring it tonight, so thank you, Sonia. All right, so we take a look at the demographics, but then we also try to compare that to what's currently in the service area. What is it that exists there now? And so you can see the map here shows municipal or MNC PPC recreation centers in the orange circles, and then a private fitness center or gym in a blue square. And then we've drawn some dotted lines around where the aquatic offerings are in the service area. And so the big takeaway here is that a lot of the opportunities are spread across the service area, which is a good thing when we think about geographic proximity. But there's a range of offerings within the service area, and private offerings aren't always equivalent to what's offered at a municipal or a public facility. And so we try to take a look at what's behind, the square footage and what's being offered at each of those. We know that Glendale Splash Park is really the only public aquatics offering that is within the actual service area. But you'll note here that we've added Teresa Banks and the Sports and Learning Complex, which is just to your west in Service Area 4, as well as some facilities in Greenbelt, which is to your north in Service Area 1 there. So we wanted to highlight those because we know those may be facilities that you're already traveling to and using, but this area really lacks that aquatic and non-aquatic recreation space. And so that's something that we know is needed to serve the needs of the service area, and especially near the core or the central part of the service area. So as Bridget mentioned, and in comparison to our previous map here, Glendale Community Center has been identified as really that best location to analyze for a potential multi-generational center. And that's based on the distance in which residents should live within a center. We have started looking at Glendale as part of this process, and it does align with a lot of the criteria that we've established for a multi-generational center location in compliance with 2040 as well. It's central. There's a lot of regional appeal to where it sits on the bike trail, as well as with its vehicular access. And it's pretty well known in the community. It's also a site that is already owned by the commission, so it's not one in which they would have to go out and spend money to purchase land. So we wanted to just quickly show you what some of the criteria or the requirements that we developed for this process are. We won't go into too much detail here, but just kind of give you an overview of what we were looking for and how Glendale Community Center meets that. And so, as we mentioned, there's a regional appeal to its connectivity, both to the roads and trails, as well as to other parks in the area. It's one that we believe a multi-generational center can fit on the site. It's a really large site, and there is an existing building there that's not very large, but we think that the site would be able to fit a larger program on it, recognizing that there would need to be additional parking and outdoor amenities added to support that. And then what we're hoping to develop as part of this is that implementation plan to really understand what the cost would be to, in this case, not to purchase, but to develop that site. What might it look like? How might it be able to achieve some of the environmental goals that the commission has? And in terms of the schedule goals, this is one that's already owned, so it wouldn't necessarily have to go through that same process to purchase land. So that's a plus when it comes to the schedule. So we started a little bit, as Bridget mentioned, this is our first broad community meeting, but we've been having a lot of smaller focus groups and stakeholder meetings behind the scenes. And actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to do this slide and then I'll come back to what I was about to say. For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with Glendale, the community center, we wanted to give you a quick overview. You can see the property lines here outlined in yellow, and then the splash pad, the splash park is specifically identified within that parcel. But it's a pretty large site, about 20 acres on that site. And the facility itself was constructed in '93. In total, about 20,000 square feet of community center, splash park, and pool house amenities, and then some parking spaces. But it's a facility that has not received any substantial or major renovation in the past, well, since it's been constructed. So we know that it's one that is going to need some investment. It's an aging building. Besides its maintenance and minor updates, it's going to need a major renovation or modernization in the near future. We also know from talking to staff that they can't offer all the programs they want to in that facility, or all the programs that the community asks them for in that facility, because a lot of the spaces are old. You know, they were built at a time when some of the program popularity was different. We're, you know, recreating a little bit differently today. And so we really see the opportunity to modernize that existing community center as a plus, because we know that it can do more to serve the community in this area. So as I was mentioning a second ago, and I jumped ahead of myself, we've been chatting with the community in some smaller venues before coming here to you tonight, and trying to better understand some of the you know, pros and cons of the site for them, and then also some of the things that they want to see in a program. And so this slide here is specific to the site itself. We heard a lot about Glendale being that hub for the community, and it having that frontage on 193, which is a major highway in the area, and its proximity to 450. But we recognize that there's a need for additional parking, especially on those really popular splash pad weekends. We know this is really a regional amenity for people to come and bring their family to the splash park. We know that the trail itself is important in its connectivity, but the character of the area is also important in recognizing that there's a scenic byway on the backside of the property that's important to maintain that historic character. And then the community, I'll come back to that. The community also gave us some input in terms of what their recreation needs and aquatic needs are. As well as some of what I was mentioning on that importance of context. And so first we heard that they need larger multi-purpose rooms to support the programs that are popular. We heard an interest in even some like rentable outdoor pavilions and spaces like the one you see there on the right, something that could host outdoor gatherings. And then we heard about seniors and teens as unique populations that are looking for indoor gathering spaces, unique walking options around the site or in the building itself. And then when it comes to aquatics, obviously the popularity of the splash park, but then thinking about some other opportunities for seniors where they may want to do pool walking, or a therapeutic option might be desired for the community. And then again, connecting to the last slide that I showed you there, recognizing that there are historic properties around, and that Bell Station Road, that scenic byway, is important. And the tree-lined streets nearby are also important to the community. So really thinking about how this facility fits into the broader community is something that's important for the community. And so we want to take a moment just to share a couple of polls real quick. To ask you what you think is a benefit and then a drawback. So the first one's going to be a benefit of putting a multi-generational center at the Glendale site. So take a minute and respond here. And while you're filling out that poll, we'll give you just another minute or a few more seconds to answer the poll there that's on your screen. But remember that you can use the chat box if you have any questions. I see that we've maybe been moving a little too fast on the poll, so my apologies. I'll slow that down for you. But please use the comment and question box to ask our staff anything that maybe comes up in the moment. All right, so I'm going to close this poll. Let's see what some people think are the benefits of the site here. So it seems like people really share the sentiment that it is easy to access. That's certainly important. And it seems to be that the community hub is also important. So thank you very much for sharing what you believe is a benefit of the site. If you commented other, please feel free to provide what you think another benefit of the site is. And then let's hear what you think might be a drawback or something that we need to think about when planning this site in the future. So what might be a drawback of the site? I'll give you just another second to vote. Let's share. So in terms of drawback, it seems like several of you actually don't see any drawbacks. Sorry, my screen's really small here. Pop this out. Well, I can't make it larger. There we go. And some of you live nearby, and obviously you worry what that could mean for your neighborhood. If there was another drawback there that wasn't listed, it seems like a lot of you shared that sentiment. Please feel free to provide that for our commenters. Okay, apologies. There we go. So using the feedback that we heard already to date on the site, as well as the programs that you're desiring, we were able to develop a starter or preliminary program to start thinking about based on that participation analysis, the community input, so that we can refine this with your feedback tonight. And so my team member Amato is about to walk you through a lot of these components in their specifics, so I don't want to tax your patience here, but you can see a high level overview, some of which make up the core components of the multi-generational concept: the courts, the track, the fitness area, as well as the pool. But then there's also some opportunities where we can make this really unique to what you need. So the size of the areas, the types of spaces that are in there, the outdoor field or components that might matter to you. So we're excited to hear more from you, and I'm going to turn this over to Amato and Karen. So.
Amato, going into potential program. Thanks, Kayla.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. Since we have an existing community center on the site, I thought I'd begin the conversation in terms of spaces available with the existing community center, and comparing that, and we will be comparing that to the multi-generational center, just to give you some understanding of what the differences would be. The existing community center has a fitness area, which is a smallish room with equipment. Has a gymnasium. It has 2 multi-use rooms that are subdivided with an operable partition. It has a preschool daycare function, and it has an art classroom, which is a dedicated program space. And then obviously the outside, you have your splash park. So that's what we have as our existing facility. So if we go to so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start talking about the individual components of the multi-gen and compare it, and just as a reference, I'm going to compare it to the existing facility just so you understand the differences. So starting with the fitness strength training area, the existing building has about an 800 square foot room that houses the equipment, as opposed to in the preliminary program that we've done, the potential of it is roughly about 8,300 square feet, which would have open fitness area and group fitness. I'm going to walk through some photographs and pictures to just outline what the elements could be. So we start with cardio equipment. We have some resistance machines. We would have free weights as part of the space. And then also, if there was a demand for it, we would be able to have some CrossFit equipment as well. And in the group fitness category, you'd be able to do things like dance and aerobics, yoga, and then Zumba, and then the one last element would be that we're going to talk about would be cycling, and potentially any other program that has a demand for it. The next area, and before I go to this, let me reiterate one thing. Let me kind of go back a little bit and reiterate one thing, is that the preliminary program has been developed based on exterior focus groups, interior, which means focus groups that have the spaces, and some limited community input. What we're here to do is to get your input, the community's input, relative to the assumptions that have been made thus far. And we want to try to either validate them or give us some new direction if necessary. So that's why either the chat box is important for you to tell us that, or we're going to have some polls that will ask some specific questions about this. So now back, the court's indoor track. The existing facility has one court, does not have an indoor track, and it has limited seating for the watching anything happening on the court. The preliminary program will look at having two courts with a mezzanine indoor track, which means it's an elevated indoor track, so it can be used separately from when the gym is being used, and then has more seating area for the courts. We're going to have some photographs here to just kind of show you. Here, for example, is basketball, which is the standard. Now, the same basketball court can be lined with additional area so that you could play also indoor soccer, futsal, volleyball, and badminton. Typically, those are the sports that are mostly used. Then we have the indoor track, which can be used jogging, walking, and in this photograph, it's going around the gym. But what it can do, in order to make it longer, it can also wrap around, which is the next photo now. It can wrap around the fitness area if the fitness area is on that mezzanine level also. So that's one way to extend the walking area, so you're just not walking around the gym. The next group of rooms would be the multi-use rooms, that are flexible rooms that can change use fairly easily, because the existing facility has two rooms or one room that can be subdivided into rooms with an operable partition. They're fairly small rooms. The preliminary program has identified that that'll have 4 rooms that will be larger than any of the rooms on the existing facility, and it'll have multiple operable partitions so that the scale of the spaces can change from fairly large to fairly intimate. Next, we have a couple of slides here that will show the activities that could happen in those rooms. Would be either community gathering space, or religious services, civic association, community meetings, or after school activities, maybe a language class. You can set it up this way. And you could have birthday parties, which is the other thing that those rooms can be set up to accommodate. So the next group of rooms are the dedicated program rooms. These are rooms that have, because of the use that is going to accommodate, they're dedicated to a specific use, and they're fit out to provide that service. So the current building has 2 rooms, a pre-K daycare and an art classroom. The preliminary program for the multi-generational facility would have 2 to 3 rooms, which could include the same could just include the pre-K daycare that is there. It could be enlarged, the art classroom, or other facilities. We're gonna talk a little bit about what other things can be housed, and then we're gonna have an audience poll to be able to learn a little more about your feelings on this. So for example, the activities would be senior activities. You could have teen activities, esports, computer technology lab for teens. We could have culinary instruction or demonstration kitchen, such as the one you see here, for health and wellness of the community. We could have drop-in childcare, or as we talked earlier, we can have martial arts and boxing as another example of a dedicated program that could be run out of these spaces. And we could also have an incubator kitchen, which would be a little more dedicated to training people on how to use commercial kitchens as opposed to just wellness and health of your individual use. So with that, we have two polls that are going to ask you to select what would be your preference. So the first poll, and it's a two-part because we have so many types of spaces, so we have two parts to the poll. First one is, which category of dedicated program space is the highest priority to you? Select two out of the ones listed: dedicated gathering space, dedicated for seniors, dedicated gathering for teens, preschool childcare, the instructional full-size kitchen, or health and wellness and social services. So please go ahead and give us your opinion on it, as to which ones would be the highest priority to you. So if we, please continue to participate. We certainly would love to hear from all of you as to what is your preference. Okay, we'll give it one more minute and then we'll close it. And let's look and see what the findings were. So health and wellness and social services was the highest, had the highest number of clicks. And then we have a tie with dedicated gathering space for seniors and dedicated gathering space for teens. And then childcare in the kitchen came below that. Thank you for that. Now we're going to have another poll, which is going to give you other sets of options to choose from. And out of this group, we have gymnastics, cheerleading, martial arts, boxing, esports, computer technology lab, or an arts classroom. So if you would please let us know what's the highest priority to you. All right, please continue. Thank you. We'll give it one more second. Okay, thank you very much. And let's see what the findings are. So the computer technology lab received overwhelmingly the most votes, with the arts classroom coming in second, and then gymnastics, martial arts, and esports behind. Well, thank you very much for your input. What we'd like to do now is I'm going to continue with the other component elements of the multi-generational facility, which is the aquatics. The existing facility has an outdoor splash park, which is seasonal in use. The preliminary program for the multi-generational facility would be an expanded splash park and plus indoor aquatics for indoor leisure and potential competition, swimming. So let's go to some of the options. So for example, a lap lane pool, which is what you're seeing in the upper part of the photograph, Can be used for leisure swimming, can be used for training, can be used for learn to swim. The next slide. We can do water aerobics in that same lap pool. The water is not as warm as some people might like it, but you could do it. Now, we're going to talk a little bit later about another type of pool that we would be able to do water aerobics into and water walking. So then we have competition, which is a lap pool that has potentially a few more lanes, potentially bigger walking area around it to allow for competition. And obviously it has starting blocks for people to swim. And then we have spa, whirlpool, therapy pool, clinical wellness. This pool is a warmer pool, whereas a lap pool is usually about 82 degrees in temperature. A pool like this can be 86 to 88 degrees. So in this pool, you could do water aerobics, you could do water walking, and you could do clinical and therapy in this kind of pool. So, and then we have, of course, the leisure recreational pool components, such as a lazy river, which is what you're seeing here. You can sit in a tube and float around, or a splash, a splash spray park that got slides and just lots of fun toys to play in. So what I would like to do now is have another poll where we're going to ask you some questions relative to your preference on the aquatics program. And in this one, we're asking for you to choose just one of the following: lap swimming or aquatic exercise, learn to swim programs, swim team or meets, leisure swimming or lazy river, or therapy or clinical wellness. So please go ahead and start. Okay, we'll give it another couple of seconds. All right, we'll close the poll. Thank you. And what we find is lap swimming, aquatic exercise received the most votes, with therapy or clinical wellness close behind. And then the learn to swim, swim team, and leisure swimming round out the selection. Thank you very much for that. And we now go to the outdoor elements, which is the last component of the multi-generational center that we're going to talk about. The existing facility has a lot of space, but it has no formal outdoor elements. The preliminary program, we would propose to provide a turf field of some type, with also active and passive outdoor programs, which we can talk about as the slides next. So examples of active outdoor activities is a baseball or softball field, obviously different sizes, but that's one type of field. And then we have the other choice of having a soccer field that can also, you can play football, you can play flag football, you can play, next slide, you can play lacrosse, you can play field hockey or kickball, just depending upon how additionally you stripe the field. And then we also have some passive outdoor activities that we can provide, such as walking or jogging trail, playgrounds, children's playground, community garden, as you're seeing here, or picnic areas, or pavilions, as was mentioned earlier in the conversation, or for environmental discovery, or just for picnicking or resting. So what I'd like to do is just briefly do a summary of the space of what we talked about, and then we have two more polls to round out the information we're looking to get from you. Thank you. So the existing building has one room. The potential will have one much larger open area, almost 10 times as large. The courts, you have one court in the potential program, we would have 2 courts plus an indoor track. Multi-use rooms, we would have we have 2 rooms right now, 1 to 2 rooms. In the preliminary program for the multi-gen, we would have 4 rooms, subdividable. Dedicated program rooms, we have 2 rooms right now in the existing facility, and that would become 2 to 3 rooms in the new facility. Aquatics, we have an outdoor splash park, whereas in the potential programming of the new facility, we would be looking at an expanded splash park and an indoor aquatics facility. And then the outdoor programs, currently there are none, and the potential would be for a field with some passive, possibly some passive outdoor activities. So what I'd like to ask is, now we have a poll that we'd like to run, and the first poll is what your highest priority would be for the indoor spaces. And you can select 2 out of these 5: fitness, strength training, group fitness, courts and indoor track, indoor aquatics, dedicated program space, or flexible multi-purpose space. People would pick 2 out of these 5 choices. Now we'll let it go a little longer. We'd like to get as many of you to vote as possible. Okay, we'll go 1 second more. All right, very good. Thank you very much. It looks like flexible multi-purpose space has the most, but indoor aquatics and fitness strength training came in right behind it. And then we have the courts, indoor track, and the dedicated program space as rounding out the 5. Thank you. Now what we'd like to do is one more. This is the last poll, I promise. One more poll where we'd like to get your highest priority of outdoor spaces. And again, you can select 2: multi-purpose fields, basketball, baseball or softball field, walking or jogging trail, outdoor pavilions, picnic areas or playground, or environmental spaces, community gardens. Again, please, you can pick 2 of your highest priority to you. We'll let this go a little longer to see if we can get more of you to participate. All right, we'll close it now. So looking at the results, outdoor pavilions, picnic areas, playground received the most votes, with walking or jogging trail and multi-purpose fields coming in right behind it. A little bit of a few of you, 1 or 2 of you indicated baseball and environmental spaces. So thank you very much. And with that, we are closing our program discussion.
So now we're going to go into a bit of Q&A. We're going to bring up panelists that will help to address questions and concerns. It's not too late to submit questions, so please keep them coming. A lot of questions have been answered live, but we are available to answer more. So I'll turn it now back to Kayla Anthony.
Thank you, Karen. And I think Sonia and maybe Bridget are going to join us here while Claire and Katie get some of our questions together. And if we went too quickly in any of the polls, or there was any that you felt like you wanted to share more about, please feel free to add that as a comment. And just to reiterate what Karen said, I know they've been answering some of your questions already, but we're going to bring up some of the broader Q&A right now.
Okay, so we got a question about historic Bell Station Road, which runs behind the Glendale Community Center. And the question was, the historic Bell Station Road viewshed must be restored and protected from the existing Glendale Community Center facility. Bell Station Road is a meandering rural lane dating back to the early years of this nation and still today reflects the open space, rural and agricultural heritage of Prince George's County. Accordingly, Bell Station Road has been formally identified by Prince George's County as a special and unique county resource for almost 4 decades. Bell Station Road was designated a scenic road in 1984 Scenic Road Study and was designated a historic road in 1992 Historic Sites and Districts Plan. Glendale community residents are committed to preserving the Bell Station Road viewshed. When the Glendale Community Center was first constructed, Glendale area residents brought their concerns about its possible effect on Bell Station Road viewshed to MNC-PPC's attention, requesting, among other things, that MNC-PPC plant vegetative screening to minimize potential adverse viewshed effects. So I think the question is, will we continue to adhere to that with this new design?
Thank you, Claire, for the question, and thank you, Mr. Wixon, for sharing that history with the team and members of the community. We have done some research and learned some more about Bell Station Road, and we will definitely take into account the historic character of this road and the protections that are in place for it, and work with all of the agencies as we plan for the future of this site and look for additional opportunities to enhance not only our site, but be good neighbors in this Glendale community.
There is a follow-up to that right afterward about the MNC-PPC has not yet responded to the community's request for screening. They're again asking for vegetative screening for existing facility. Similarly, the light pollution caused by poorly chosen, designed, and situated lighting for the existing Glendale Community Center is unacceptable, particularly as it adversely affects Bell Station Road viewshed. Existing light pollution needs to be corrected and light pollution needs to be addressed and minimized to the greatest extent possible. There must continue to be no direct vehicular access to the Glendale Community Center from Bell Station Road.
There's no intention to make direct access from Bell Station Road. That wouldn't be in keeping with the character of this natural facility. As for screening and lighting, that's something that we can look into more closely. Given the distance of our existing facility from Bell Station Road, I think there may be some things that we can do to ensure that there's not any negative impacts on that facility. If you would like to reach out and talk to staff in Park Planning and Development, we definitely be willing to talk to you and look at what we can do. Given the advances in technology with site lighting, I can imagine that there will be some upgrades that we can do that may be able to improve the situation.
Thanks, Sonia. Another question is that there's already a trail. Why do we need another trail as part of this effort?
So I could have misspoke, but I don't think there is, it's not adding a trail as part of this effort, it's connecting to the trail. So the WBNA trail, the Washington, Baltimore, and Annapolis trail actually runs right adjacent to the site itself. And so part of the benefit of this site is that it's actually located on that already regional resource, but it would not be about adding to this particular site.
Another question is, why wasn't the 150-acre Glendale Hospital property already owned by MNC-PPC not considered as part of this effort?
We began with the recommendations in the Formula 2040 plan as the foundation for this effort and really wanted to look to validate that effort or see if there were reasons to change. With our information collected so far and the assets that are developed at the Glendale Community Center site, in addition to its direct access to a Maryland Highway 193. At this point, we're seeing that as the best opportunity for this multi-gen development. But that doesn't mean we don't have a opportunity to continue to develop or work to develop a vision for the Glendale Hospital 150 acres and to find, I'd say, complementary development opportunities for that site. We're excited that we have a strong development planning team that is working to look for opportunities for the Glendale Hospital core. And we believe that as a follow-up to our efforts to look for a future for that core site, we will begin to look for opportunities for the 150 acres. Our master planning efforts in our park planning development team right now are focused on our existing regional parks. We've completed the master plan for Watkins. We're currently working on master plans for Walker Mill and Casca. We're going to finish with a master plan for our Fairland Regional Park site, which is also slated to be a future multi-gen. Once we complete that, we will have looked at all of our existing established regional parks, and then we're going to move forward with the effort to look at our larger holdings of 150 acres or more, which includes Glendale Hospital, Westphalia Central Park, Randall Farm, and other sites throughout the county as future regional park options or opportunities. And we look to see where Glendale Hospital can go and how that can work with this Glendale Community Center during that effort.
Fine. We're getting a lot of comments about liking the idea of indoor tennis and racquetball options. We've had quite a few of those. Final question I see on here is the Formula 2040 plan failed to consider amenities situated in the city of Bowie. Reliance on the Formula 2040 plan to justify ignoring locating this amenity on the Glendale Hospital Park is misplaced and ill-advised. And I think that was a comment.
Yeah. So just to talk about racquetball, pickleball, and tennis, we're excited to look for those opportunities. We know that pickleball is a growing sport, and we're seeing that happen in the region and in our system. And so we'll look for the opportunity for these racket sports to potentially be included in our programming efforts for this Glendale site. And we'll look and see if the demand is there. As for Formula 2040 and the data collection and how we look at sites, although we do not directly count the facilities that are provided by municipalities such as the city of Bowie or the city of Greenbelt, District Heights, Glenard, and other College Park, other municipalities who provide their own facilities directly in our charts when we're showing where we're going as an agency, we do take them into account when we establish our level of service for how we provide amenities to our community. And so although you may not see them directly in our outward facing planning, it is included when we try to assess what our community needs. We also at times take into account what's happening outside of our county borders when we're looking at demand. And we use all of that information to develop a set of recommendations for a park system that services all of our community members.
And I will add that while when we were embarking on this project, this feasibility study, we took all the data that was in Formula 2040 and we updated it to add facilities that we had built to date. And we also added the Bowie facilities when we did that calculation and some of the other municipal facilities to really get a better picture. So while it is not published in Formula 2040, when we did some analysis early on in this study, we did include them to make sure that we were really looking at the correct level of service being provided to residents by all municipalities.
It's an interesting fact to even kind of take into account. We also do look at what private facilities are there and what HOA offerings are put in place when we're developing and planning for the facilities that we offer as a public agency. And so all of that into account may not be explicitly laid out in our Formula 2040 plan. We do have additional information in other planning documents that we can share if you would like.
I think that's all the questions we've had for this evening.
See if anybody else wants to add any questions here or comments. Happily accepting those.
I would say, and I think the the final question is about the facilities that are offered in the city of Bowie in the Formula 2040 plan and how they're represented. I would also say that while Formula 2040 was published in 2013, I believe, we use this information kind of as a living, breathing document. Although the data and things may not have been explicitly shown in that document, potentially taken into account during that time. Like Claire stated, today in 2020, as we're doing our planning, we continue to augment that information and use it to help guide our decision making and planning.
I'm wondering where the people who are interested in the racket sports currently go to play.
Oh, we got a. Sorry, Kayla, we just got a couple more.
Great.
Thank you for sending in some additional questions. Will there be a road improvement on Route 193?
So I can, yeah, you want to?
Yeah, okay.
I was going to say that, you know, traffic studies will be a part of future design for this facility. So part of this effort will actually identify what the program should look like, a potential concept for the site, and then those actual traffic studies to determine what that impact based on the visitor amounts, the potential, you know, number of people coming through the doors, what that actually would impact, what impact that would actually have on 193. So any kind of future improvements would be, you know, further down the road to determine ingress, egress, that kind of thing. I don't know, Sonia, if that's what you were gonna.
Well, just to piggyback on that, MNC PPC, when we develop properties, go through a similar process of evaluation of traffic and access impacts for both pedestrians and vehicles. And at times in our development projects, we are required to make road improvements and other enhancements to sidewalk networks, trail networks in a similar fashion to developers. And so that traffic study that Kayla mentioned is kind of the first step of the process that would help us to identify what impacts there may be and what improvements we may be required to make.
Getting a lot of great comments. Believe it's a great idea to have it at this location. There's plenty of space, connect to various communities. Great job. Comment, Glendale Community Center should remain focused on youth aquatics. Regarding the question of where people are playing racquetball and tennis, Watkins Regional Park and Fairland. The multi-gen can accommodate various sports, including volleyball. It's hard to find places to play volleyball in the area. There's a question about when construction would begin.
So I think, and I'll let Sonia tag in, part of this plan is, or part of this process is to actually develop what that plan for implementation would look like, what the potential costs would be, and ultimately what a timeline could be. That would then have to be situated within the capital improvement plan. If any partnerships exist for the site, that would all have to be taken into account in terms of developing a timeline. But I think a lot of times we talk about, you know, the exciting part of this facility is that there's a real opportunity to have an impact in the nearer term compared to some of the other service areas that we may need to go find land and other things for those. So I don't know, Sonia, if you want to add specifically to that, but I could see this one being one of the opportunities that's on the horizon more quickly than others.
I would say stay tuned. One of the big things about doing this feasibility study process in the way that we're doing is to help us align our steps and make sure we have our funding support and a strong strategy to implement. And as Kayla said, this site has a lot of advantages. And we'll be looking for you all and your support for the recommendations as we continue through the process. And then once our planning team, consultant team moves forward, our team at PP&D will be working to include these items in our CIP. And at that time, we'll have a better sense of scheduling and how it fits in work program.
Right. A few more comments. No final questions. We have a few more comments that we can definitely address some of these offline with email. Please contact us, and we'll be happy to talk more about some of these concerns about Bell Station Road and the Glendale Hospital.
Yes, I'll just say thank you to everybody that attended, that participated in the polls. If you have any last questions, please feel free to submit them right now while I'm doing the spiel. But you know, we have the website here. This is like a shortened link that'll take you directly to the website. There's going to be more information provided there, and I think the really important thing is that we are really trying to capture a broad swath of the community, and so send this link to your friends, to your neighbors, your community associations. We are going to be posting the poll you saw here tonight. They're online along with a video, and then we're also going to be doing all of this work in Spanish. So those are going to be coming in a couple of weeks. So tell any of your Spanish-speaking neighbors and friends that they can also participate in this process. There's also contact information on the site, so if you have any additional things that maybe slipped your mind tonight, you didn't think to ask or add, please feel free to reach out to us in that way. And I think that will conclude. Karen has shared the link there, so if there's no other questions, that will conclude our evening. We good, Claire?
Yeah.
All right. Well, great. Thank you so much. Enjoy your evenings, and please visit the website when you get a chance.
Thanks, everyone.
Good
Have a
night,
great
all.
evening.
Thanks, Karen.
Hey.